everyone and acknowledging the traditional owners of our lands and the people of the land we're on, the people of the Kulin Nation. Every week we have someone different, and this week's topic we're looking at coffee grounds. ecologiQ's implementation manager, Denis Sedran, will be interviewing our specialist from MRPV. Just before we start, I will, if I can get my screen to work, well, just some housekeeping. Your mics are on mute throughout this session, but we have got the Q&A and the chat that you can pop any questions into. We welcome questions. The session will run for 30 minutes, but the first 20 minutes is the interview and the chat, and the last 10 minutes we allocate for questions. So we'll just see how we go, but please feel free to pop any questions in as they come to hand during the session. I will stop sharing my screen and we'll get going with our session. And I'll welcome Denis and Mamode to the screen. Hello, we there? Hi.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Thanks.
Cheryl.
Hi, Mamode. Thanks for joining us today.
That's all right. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So let's get started. So can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Okay, my name is Mamode Osikoya. I'm the environment manager with MRPV. I look after some of the suburban road upgrade projects, particularly in the north. I work with our delivery partners to ensure environmental compliance, as well as making sure that they meet their sustainability and recycle first targets.
Cool, thanks. So can you explain a little bit about the product that we are talking about today and the project that helped implement this great initiative?
Okay, so we're talking about coffee grounds here, recycled coffee grounds, and it was implemented on Charles Road upgrade. Charles Road is a 1.5 kilometer road upgrade, and they used coffee grounds for their landscaping.
Fantastic. And correct me if I'm wrong, was Charles Road one of the first implementations of the Recycled First policy?
That's correct. It was kind of a green space for them. It was really, really challenging at the beginning because it was kind of a gray area. They were the first to implement the Recycle First policy, as you said, and they had to come up with a Recycle First plan. They had to walk through waters that had not been walked before. So yeah, it was pretty challenging at the beginning, but yeah, fruitful in the end.
Well, that's fantastic. They led the way. So can you now explain some of the process that you went through in implementing this initiative, and I guess if there were any testing involved and so forth?
Yeah, so this whole process started with a conversation on site. You know, someone from ACE Contractors, who's the delivery partner on Charles Road, you know, mentioned it. And usually recycled coffee grounds is used in farms. So you have the farmers, traditional farmers use recycled coffee grounds, and it was mentioned on site. And you know, I said, look, it's worth a try, you know. So they contacted Reground, a social enterprise, and they got a portion of coffee grounds delivered to site. And the sample was taken from the coffee grounds, and then sample taken from the topsoil, because the plan was to mix the coffee grounds with the topsoil. So they took samples from the coffee ground and samples from the topsoil and sent off to the lab. And it's also important to say that the person who actually thought about this left the project before the results came back from the lab. But the project team took that vision on, you know, and the results came back and was pretty good. So we sent it to the lab to just test against, of course, the VICRO standard and then Australian standard as well, a couple of tests done. And it came back well. There were certain recommendations given, particularly with that type of the topsoil on site, saying that they couldn't exceed more than 10% with the mixing ratio. So it came back with recommendations that was like a guidance document for the project to work on, pretty much.
Oh, fantastic. That's really great that they took on the initiative, considering that the original person left the project. So that's a really great culture that they really trying to push forward. So So I understand that this was obviously a first to the project.
Mm.
So this was considered an innovation. Can you tell us
Correct.
a little bit about that?
Yeah, it was considered an innovation because, you know, like I said earlier, you would have the farmers, you know, take coffee grounds, and, you know, I mean, coffee itself has coffee grounds, it has a lot of benefits, you know. It's you know, improves soil nutrients, supports plant growth, you know, it repels insects and pests, you know. It also increases biological activity. So it's something that is being used on farms, but it's never been done on a construction project. So you can imagine you know, feeling they had at the beginning, saying, look, what will go wrong, what could go wrong, what happens if this doesn't work, you know. But then they were bold enough, I would say, you know, and they were bold enough to just take the step and say, look, let's try it. And that's why, you know, like I said, it's an innovation. It's never been done in the construction industry, you know, but it took the bold step, you know, and everything turned out well, apparently.
That's really good.
Yeah.
And so with this, can you elaborate a bit more? But like the testing that you did, you said you came up with a mixed ratio. How did they sort of get to that point which was which is the exact ratio that they should use?
Okay, so usually with the topsoil you use for landscaping, you have to test against the VCROADS spec 720, and you also have to, you know, test against the Australian standard. I think it's 4454 and 4419 or so. So you have to test against those standards. So usually you would have, you know, elements that come in the topsoil, and you would also have elements, of course, from the coffee grounds. And based on that, they had to, you know, there was like a little bit of mix and match, you know, a little bit of mix and match, saying if I put in 5% of the coffee ground and then 95% of the topsoil, what do I get? And just like I said, because we have a specification, there's a standard that we have to work with that is approved already. So I guess pretty much they were looking for what they could mix together, what they could mix to make sure that we're not exceeding the threshold in those standards that we had to work with. And they came back with that 10% ratio. So we had to mix 10%, and then, you know, the other with topsoil. When we did, you know, the initial studies on site, we're expected to have like 600 cubes of topsoil for the landscaping. So with the calculation, it just meant we needed at least or maximum of 60 cubes of coffee grounds. Yeah.
That seems like a lot of coffee grounds.
A lot.
But I'm sure there's a lot more out there.
Oh, of course, of course. And it's also important to say that, you know, at the moment in Australia, almost, I would say more than 26,000 million tons of coffee grounds goes to landfill, you know. Yeah. And sorry, I meant 26,000 tons. I meant to say 26,000 tons of coffee grounds goes to landfill. And Reground, the social enterprise, they divert over 850 tons every year. And then if you do the maths, you realize that they're diverting like 3% of the coffee grounds. So we ask ourselves, that's a lot. But then what happens to the other 97%? They're going back to the landfill.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting stat.
Yeah, it is. And it's growing. It's growing because we have people who tend to love coffee more every day.
Yes. Absolutely. It's one of those things that you drink more coffee.
Yeah, exactly.
So obviously Reground were heavily involved with this process. So were there any other people or companies involved to get this across the line?
Yeah, apart from Reground, of course. And like I said earlier, Reground is a social enterprise. It's also important to state that the coffee was delivered to site at absolutely no cost because it's a social enterprise. But of course, I have to give accolades to ACE Contractors, who are the delivery partners on that project. Like I said earlier, it was a dream for them. Like everyone owned it. Even though the person who talked about it, who started the process, left the project, every single person owned the process, owned that dream. To the excavator operator, who had to be very careful with his mixing, to the sustainability and environment team on site, to the comms team, the managers. I mean, if you think about it, imagine you know, being a manager and you have someone walk up to you and tell you, look, I want to try this thing and it's going to cost us money. I need to take this to the lab to get this tested. And it's something that has never been done, you know. As a manager, you'd have that, you know, doubt in you to say, look, why do I really have to do this? It wasn't like they were trying to meet any of they weren't trying to meet any goal at the time. It's not like they were trying to meet a particular target, but it was just an innovation. You know, it was an initiative that someone thought about. So I of course, I have to give them that accolade as well, because, you know, they pushed it. And of course, within MRPV as well, you know, I mean, I, for one, I'm supported with managers and directors who would tell you, just go there and do it. If you meet any roadblock, come back to me. Tell me who asked you not to do it, you know. I mean, so if I get that kind of support and I'm able to give our delivery partners that kind of support as well, you know, it's really, really important. So yeah, it was pretty much MRPV, reground, or of course ACE contractors. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's that culture is really good.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we want with, obviously, the Recycle First policies, change that status quo, which is great. And so you mentioned regrounds provided the coffee for free. So they were a social enterprise, obviously. So they weren't getting paid for this. They were involved in this whole time without any financial benefit or gain.
No, nothing. So they are a social enterprise. They collect coffee grounds as well as recycled plastics from around and then deliver them to people. And I think their objective is to make sure that they're diverting waste from landfill. And that's it.
Yep.
They get funds, I guess. They get funds and grants, but then it had absolutely no cost to the project. No cost. Yeah.
Wow.
Interesting.
Accolades to them. Yeah, so you spoke about the benefits of the coffee grounds in the topsoil, but do you find that there were any other benefits that came about from this initiative?
Oh, yes. I mean, it helped the project also meet the social procurement target, which was really important as well. And then, of course, you know, I would say the publicity also gave Reground as well. It was really good. I mean, Reground was like a finalist for the Premier Sustainability Award, you know, and they also won the Melbourne Award for Sustainability. I think that was last week as well, you know. So they've come to the limelight with this, which is really, really good. You know, so there were other benefits. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. So what were some of the challenges and barriers that you faced, and how did you overcome them?
Coffee grounds is known to have high phosphorus, nitrogen, potassium, a couple of elements. So I guess one of the recommendations, you know, the recommendations we got from the lab saying that we couldn't exceed 10%. When that recommendation came, I remember I was on site that day, and when we had a look at the results, you know, I think we kind of fidgeted a little, like, how do we ensure we do not exceed this 10%? You know, so that was kind of a challenge for us. But I guess we were able to overcome that challenge because everyone was on board. Everyone owned the process, you know, being able to ensure that we do not exceed that 10% mixing ratio was a bit of a challenge. And then apart from that as well, Reground was, you know, they were bringing the coffee grounds to site, and every delivery was about 1.5 cubic meters, you know. And imagine we were aiming for 60 cubes. So you can imagine how many deliveries we needed to get. For Child's Road, because it wasn't such a large project, it was easy for us to plan. We could receive the coffee grounds in batches and then, you know, roll out the landscaping package in batches. You know, we also had a little, you know, stockpile location where we could just seclude for that whole mixing propaganda, you know. But that said, it was also a challenge. So, you know, talking about, and I'm saying this because some other people who want to plunge into this as well for, you know, bigger projects, one of the limitations might be being able to get the coffee grounds you need for your project. You might need to start planning early. Make sure that you have maybe a stockpile location, you can start receiving the coffee grounds, you know. Yeah, so being able to receive all the coffee grounds that we needed at the time, yeah, was a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, cool. So the logistics around it all.
Correct.
Yeah, that's great. So were there any lessons learned from this whole process?
For me, it was a reminder that waste isn't waste until it's wasted. Yeah, apart from that, I would say that, you know, it just reminded me that we should be resilient, you know, challenge the status quo. And it also, you know, just enforced the importance of having a very good support structure, because there's so many people who have these ideas, you know, beautiful ideas, but they don't have that support to push these ideas to fruition. Yeah, so this just, you know, what I learned from this is, look, if you have a good support structure, I think you can, I mean, you can take over the world.
Yeah.
Because I think that's, yeah, and in this, you know, in this walk, in this process of, you know, getting ourselves into the circular economy, we need that support structure, you know, because there are so many things that that used to be business as usual that we would have to challenge, and you don't want to walk that walk alone. And I think that's what I learned from this. You can't walk it alone. You need a good support structure. You need people who you can speak to and would give you that nod and say, yes, you're fine, go. I'm waiting here. I'm with you on the journey, you know.
Yep,
Yeah.
that is very true. That can be
Yeah.
applied to many things. That's for sure.
100%. Yeah.
And that's fantastic that you got it from the contractors.
Yeah.
So obviously the project itself and the team were extremely happy with the outcome. So were there any other projects that considered going down this path already that you know of, or?
Yeah, I know a couple of projects that have reached out to me already. A couple of contractors have reached out to me, and I know one that has actually started the process of going to the lab as well. So yeah, a couple of people. I'm hoping after this Lunch and Learn, so many people will reach out as well, because I think and the dream is to have so many other construction projects have this as well, roll this initiative out. So yeah,
Cool.
fingers crossed.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will. Well, thanks a lot for that. That's been great. Do you have any final last words of wisdom?
Last words of wisdom. I think I said this before. Challenge the status quo. I mean, if we are thinking about having a sustainable or I would say a circular economy, then we shouldn't take business as usual. Business as usual cannot be business as usual anymore. You know, we need to start thinking outside the box. When you think about something, speak to someone about it, and don't kill the dream. You know, don't kill the dream. Make sure you're supported by people who have the same dream with you. And it takes a village. I would say it takes a village. It's not it's not a journey that one can walk, you know, alone. It takes a village. And I believe if we all work together and share ideas, you know, just like what we're doing now, share ideas and help each other, yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks again for that.
That's all right.
That's definitely true. It takes a village, that's
Yep,
for
it
sure.
does.
And before it can become business as usual, it's got to start from somewhere. So that's got to make the first step, and this is definitely a first step. And hopefully, we can turn this into business as usual for
That's the
major
plan.
projects.
That's the plan.
Fantastic. Cool. I think we'll open it up to any questions. I think Cheryl.
Yeah, I've got. I'm just going to quickly share this slide, which is the project area. Has that come up properly? Yeah. That's the project area that where the coffee grounds were applied on Childs Road. So I've got a question. I didn't see any up, but I'll stop sharing this in a minute. But did it enrich the soil? Was that? I mean, I guess that's part of the reason. Did you find that it enriched the soil, that the growth, the area where the coffee grounds were, was more enriched than the other area? Was benefit in the long term for landscaping?
Oh yes. Like I said earlier, when you mix coffee grounds with soil, it improves the nutrients in the soil. You know, improves plant growth. It's you know, it also improves water retention. So it has a lot of, you know, advantages. And like for Childs Road, when we put in the topsoil, there was a portion that had topsoil with coffee grounds, just like an image you shared now. And there was a portion that just had just topsoil without coffee grounds. And we could actually see the weeds, you know. Yeah, it just took it was like a couple of days you know. So that's to show you kind of activity, you know. Yeah, so I mean, at the end of the day, of course, we had to bump up our maintenance regime, you know, in the area. But then it's just a reflection of what's going on in there, you know. And then if you walk past that area in the morning, you see worms and all that, which shows, you know, it's really healthy soil.
Fantastic. We've actually got one question here from Belinda. Was there money saved as part of the project, for example, planting media that did not have to be purchased as a result of using the coffee grounds?
Not necessarily, because the topsoil, a major part of the topsoil that was used for landscaping was reused. It was from the project in itself. Yeah, so I would say, yeah, eventually maybe very, very tiny mini part, but then it was just 10% of, you know, the topsoil that we're meant to use, you know. Yeah, but I would say, yeah, maybe small.
But that's a benefit as well. Like if you
yeah, of 100%.
But you've also got the benefit of the quick uptake and maintenance as you're closing down the project, that you've established the site rather than having to wait the time. So there is probably an intangible benefit from that quick uptake and quick growth period.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
And I think it's also important to note as well that you know, for different areas, the mixing ratio would definitely be different. It just depends on the amount of nutrients or elements that are in the topsoil in the particular location. So for some other people, you could have your mixing ratio a lot higher. And in that case, of course, the savings will be more, you know. And for some other people, it might be lower as well, you know. So it's also important to note that, but for us, mixing ratio was 10%, but that was as per the nutrients in the topsoil that we had.
There's a couple of other questions here. Tony's just mentioned, which I was going to mention, that Reground had a stall at the ecologiQ's first Greener Infrastructure Conference in September, and that did help them grow their venture as well. So that was a really great outcome. It was great to see the social enterprises there. We've got a question from Jonathan. Are there any plans to uptake any monitoring of the performance of the trial sites? So will you do any ongoing monitoring to confirm long-term performance?
Yes. Thanks for mentioning that. I forgot to add that as well. So that's something that we have on our radar. Yes, definitely. Especially because it's one of its kind. It'll be good to follow up. Yes, so definitely.
And did you find any differences in soil erosion or soil leaching?
No, but we know that coffee grounds helps with water filtration. So nothing out of the ordinary. Yeah, nothing out of the ordinary.
We've got the questions coming in now. Is there potential to gather grounds from project neighbours? This is something we actually didn't touch on. From project neighbours in the future, like having a bin near site and the comms team informing neighbours. That's interesting.
Well,
that's a conversation we had the other day.
That's really interesting. So I'll tell you what, on Childs Road, I think they received like the first 2 deliveries, and then they thought to themselves, why would we put our own coffee waste, you know, in our compost bin if we are keeping our coffee? You know, we're keeping coffee here. So they said they had their own special coffee bin, and then they started taking out the coffee grounds. So the coffee grounds used in the site office actually went into landscaping. And I can tell you that ACE contractors as well are also delivering another project. And what they've done as well is to take out bins to the neighboring cafes, and they're already collecting coffee. So yeah, that's something that can be done 100%. There's no special treatment given to the coffee grounds that's been received. So the more the merrier.
That's great. And I think you said the other day that Reground collected the beans from the cafes nearby for this particular project.
Correct. So that's what they do. They drop their beans with the cafes, and then they just come to pick up. So they pretty much swap the beans. That's what they do. They go around and then swap the beans, but they're just trying to make sure that people are not throwing away the coffee grounds. It's not going to landfill. So give it to us.
Even not for your plants at home.
Sorry, was that deliberate that they targeted close cafes and close within the project district so as not to travel too far, or was that just how it happened?
Well, I think it's deliberate, and I think that's something that Reground is currently working on, because you can imagine the kind of publicity they've gotten after this, and a lot of people have been reaching out. That's something that I know they're working on. But for this particular project, it was just around, of course, because of the ease of logistics as well. So,
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool.
We've got another question here. Have you had challenges with native vegetation growth in soil with varied nutrients to typical Australian soils? I guess that's some of the testing, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's what the testing would tell us. But at the moment, the landscaping was pretty much by the roadside. Yeah. That's where we used the coffee grounds. But I guess with time, once we get into the full maintenance period and we start doing the testing, some of this, some of this information can be let out, But at this time, we don't have that information. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's something that will be interesting to revisit.
Yeah.
Down the track. I guess we've got a couple of minutes actually left, but just a quick question on the Recycled First, given that Childs Road was the first project, and I think we did interview someone at the start of our very first series. How did you go? I mean, obviously this helped with some of the Recycled First. It's a simple thing for projects to do, and it sounds like ACE were very supportive. So how did you go with your Recycled First program and meeting commitments, and something Denis knows much more than I do about?
Like I said, at the beginning, it was challenging because, part of the Recycle First policy and trying to roll out the plan, you have to state what your commitments are, and you're saying you're committing to using XYZ quantity of recycled products. And this is something that, it's not like it's not been done before, but people have done it, but they didn't have to commit to it, So I think with Charles Road, it was, like I said earlier, it was a kind of a great space, but I would give them thumbs up because they did really well. They had a full-fledged team that was ready to just go there and smash it. And I can tell you that I mean, the project is gradually coming to an end, and they'll get to practical completion in a couple of weeks. But I can tell you that I'm very sure they smashed it. Yeah, they did.
I know I saw recycled pipes out there at one stage. So obviously had a variety of materials.
Loads of initiatives. Yes.
That's great.
So they had all that. And that's why I said with at the beginning, something like coffee grounds was not on the table, So imagine going to your manager saying, hey, I want to do this. And the person says, what's in it for me? Yeah, but they bought the dream, they ran with it, and they delivered. Yeah.
And we've got one more question. Would there be any difference in nutrient levels between bean types?
Bean types?
So different types of coffee.
No. No, my understanding is it's all mixed. So you don't have the cappuccino in one corner and then you have the latte. It's all mixed. That's the understanding I have.
Yeah, and I think different companies produce different beans, but I guess that would show up in the testing.
Yes. Well, I think at the end of the day, you mix everything. You mix it. Yeah, it's. I mean, you wouldn't have the cafes have the beans separated. So it's all mixed. Yeah, it's all mixed.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you both. I'm just going to quickly share the screen. We had just to show you our ecologiQ. Is that working? ecologiQ. Our email and our website. If you have any further questions, if you'd like to get in touch with Mamode or Denis, or you have any questions for ecologiQ, this session is actually recorded. It will be uploaded on our knowledge share early next week. And you do need to have access to the knowledge share. So if you don't, you can let us know. We can also send you a Zoom link to it loaded up on our Zoom. But thanks again. Next week, I'll just quickly go. Next week, we're talking about porous pavement. Yarra City Council have conducted a trial well over 12 months ago, I would imagine now. And so that will be really interesting. Another great product, uses crumbed rubber and allows, it filters the dirt from stormwater, but it also allows the water to go through to the earth underneath. So I don't know if it helps with the flooding these days, but we'll find out all about that next week. But yeah, once again, thanks, Denis. Thanks, Mamode. Thanks for your time. Thanks for everyone attending. And next week will actually be our last session for this series. We'll look at doing a new series next year and maybe with some different angles. But yeah, thanks for your attendance. Thank you, Denis and Mamode. Thanks for your time.
It's okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Bye.
much.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.